Ukraine will not give up territory to Putin, even though that's exactly what Donald Trump wants, and the United States is not offering the kind of security guarantees that would suit Ukraine. That's a brief summary of today's meeting in London between Zelensky, Macron, Starmer, and Friedrich Merz. In particular, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with European leaders in London today, and one of the topics discussed was working with the American side. And it's obvious that the meeting wasn't very successful, since Macron and Merz left quickly and refused to comment to journalists. Nevertheless, later Zelensky publicly criticized Donald Trump's peace plan, stating that Ukraine will not give up its territories. Friedrich Merz admitted that he is skeptical about some of the details in the documents coming from the United States. And Emmanuel Macron stated that it is important now to find a way to bring the positions of the European Union and the United States closer together in order to agree on further steps. And this shows that there is no real convergence and the positions differ greatly. At the same time, in London and Brussels, Zelensky was negotiating with Europeans about security guarantees and continued financial support from European allies. But most importantly, Zelensky stated that Donald Trump has his own vision of how the war in Ukraine should end. And it's very different. My name's Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and write any detailed comment. Subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News, using the link in this video's description. There we publish breaking news as soon as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. So, to put it very briefly, the leaders of Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, during a meeting with the leader of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in London, emphasized the need for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer said only Ukraine decides issues about Ukraine. According to him, today's negotiations are a critical stage in the struggle for peace. Vladimir Zelensky expressed his gratitude to Ukraine's allies for organizing the meeting and emphasized that unity between Europe, Ukraine, and the United States remains the most important thing. He also noted that today the leaders of the four countries must make important decisions. At the same time, the Ukrainian leader pointed out that there are things Ukraine cannot do without the United States and cannot do without the European Union. In other words, Zelensky hinted that both allies are very, very important. Well, Macron noted that. Macron noted that it is necessary to find a way to bring the European Union and the United States of America closer together in order to agree on further steps. As Macron stated, quote, "The Russian economy is starting to suffer, especially after our latest sanctions." And further, Macron noted that, together with other countries, he supports Ukraine and peace, and also emphasized that Europe has aces up its sleeve. Well, that's clearly a message to Donald Trump. And here, Emmanuel Macron finally stated directly that the key issue of the current negotiations in London is the search for so-called convergence or similarity. In particular, it is about the alignment between the positions of the United States, Europe, and Ukraine regarding a potential peace agreement that could end Russian aggression. Emmanuel Macron says allies now need to coordinate a common approach, which currently does not exist. Macron says that there are three different visions: the United States, Russia, and Ukraine together with Europe. Quote, "The main issue is bringing our positions closer, those of Europeans, Ukrainians, and the United States, in order to complete these peace negotiations. Only after reaching a coordinated position will the parties be able to move to a new phase in which they will seek to ensure the best possible conditions for Ukraine, for Europeans, and for collective security." And what does Donald Trump do at this moment? Donald Trump, I'm not sure, it's almost like he's mocking, takes and reposts on his social network, Truth Social, an article from the New York Post titled, "Impotent Europeans Can Only Fume as Trump Rightly Cuts Them Out of Ukraine Deal." And that's the kind of article Donald Trump reposts on his social network. What's interesting, what do you see? American media are already calling this the Ukraine deal. Not a peace plan, not a peace agreement, but the Ukraine deal. At the same time, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated that he is skeptical about some of the details in the documents coming from the United States, quote, This could be a decisive moment for all of us, so we are committed to continuing to support Ukraine. The fate of this country, that is Ukraine, is the fate of Europe. And later, Zelensky stressed the importance of unity between Europe and Ukraine and among Ukraine, Europe, and the United States. Quote, "Today we discussed in detail our joint diplomatic work with the Americans, the American side, and agreed on a common position regarding the importance of security guarantees for reconstruction and the next steps." Another topic of the negotiations was further defense support for Ukraine. In addition, Zelensky categorically denied the possibility of transferring Ukrainian territories as part of the United States peace initiative. Quote, "Are we considering the question of giving up any territories? We have no legal right to Ukraine, according to our constitution, according to international law, and honestly, we also have no moral right." Zelensky noted that Russia, of course, continues to insist on the transfer of the occupied territories, but Ukraine will not agree to any concessions. At the same time, he emphasized that the United States is currently seeking a compromise, but Ukraine is firmly sticking to its position regarding territorial integrity. Although later there was information that Trump personally insists that Ukraine should surrender Donbas. Witkoff convinced him that Russia would inevitably win the war and take all of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. This will happen very soon, just 2 days from now. Well, in addition, Zelensky noted that there are 4 key points on which we will not agree with the Americans. These are the issue of Donbas, the issue of money, that is, reparations from Russia, the issue of security guarantees, and the issue of payment, the issue of production. And not only to force Russia, but also to force the United Nations. But here, I would like to remind you that the White House still hasn't officially released the contents of the peace plan proposed by the United States to end the Russia-Ukraine war. And everything we've seen, that very plan with 28 points, it was all in media publications. Unofficial reports say the draft reportedly had strict demands on Ukraine. In particular, it was about Kyiv having to actually give up Donetsk and Luhansk regions, handing them over to Russia without any military action at all. The plan also reportedly banned Ukraine from joining NATO, and the country was supposed to establish a neutral status at the legislative level. And NATO countries were supposed to vote in their parliaments and confirm that Ukraine would never be accepted into their alliance. But what Putin demanded, Trump repeated as well. After negotiations between Ukrainian and American representatives, the document was revised. Last week, President Volodymyr Zelensky said the dialogue resulted in an updated 20-point version. But despite this, today Zelensky emphasized that there is still no common vision with the United States on the real issue of territoriality. In addition, Zelensky noted that security guarantees for Ukraine from the United States must be approved by Congress so that the scenario with the Budapest Memorandum does not repeat itself. And here I will quote, "Of course, only if it is not the Budapest Memorandum, not empty promises, but these guarantees will be voted on in the United States Congress." That's what we're talking about. So far, they have a positive attitude toward this move. Security guarantees from the European coalition are ready. The key issue is how partners will respond if Russian aggression resumes. So for now, I haven't received an answer to that. And finally, Zelensky answered the question about whether China is interested in ending the war. Quote, "Today, a weak Russia and a defeated Russia are not beneficial to China. As a result, Ukrainians are suffering. Because if it is not beneficial for China to stop Russia, it means that the war will continue. It doesn't mean that China is directly supporting Russia with weapons, but it definitely isn't supporting the end of this war." I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to like. And let me remind you, if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.